to Crawlspace. I'm Tim here tonight with Lance, as always. What's up, Lance?
Just hanging out on this October 26th evening. It's so close to Halloween. So excited about that. And we did the ghost episode and kind of off the cuff asked for listeners to provide us with their ghost stories. And we had a pretty decent response from that. We had a really good reaction. How many do you think we had, like, just on average?
Probably a couple hundred responses, ghost stories. Yeah, no, it was pretty cool. So we really on a whim decided to talk about ghosts a couple weeks ago, and we said, hey, it's getting close to Halloween. Maybe we'll do another episode if we get enough cool ghost stories from our audience, and you guys delivered. So we're going to read some emails tonight. Also going to tell a quick story about my sister, and we have a clip from an old friend that we'll play in just a bit. So this is Ghost Part 2, Lance.
Ghost Part 2, I like it. And you said that they delivered, and they really did, and I just want to thank everybody who contributed by sending in their ghost stories. They were awesome. We did read them all. Tim might have exaggerated a little when he said hundreds. I'd say we got dozens. We did read them. We couldn't, just for the sake of time, we couldn't possibly read every one of them on the air, but know that your story was read by us, and for the most part, it did keep me up a couple extra minutes per night thinking about some of these stories.
And that's a lot for Lance, because Lance needs his sleep.
I need my 4 to 6 hours. I need my 4 to 6 hours because this shit doesn't make itself pretty.
Right, yeah. Our first story comes from Brad. Brad says, I need to preface by saying I am not a believer in any of this stuff, but I do keep an open mind, and I just want hard evidence before I jump into believing things. The only evidence I ever come across for anything paranormal is through another party. I've never photographed anything myself or experienced anything truly significant, so there's always that nagging voice in the back of my mind when I see photos like this that says bullshit, I think,
Brad, you and I are on the same page with this. I've never seen anything. I want to see something I would love to believe. And so it really resonated when I read that from Brad. And he goes on to say, now with that being said, this photo I have sent was sent to me by a close friend, 2010, and this is his story. He says his sister sent him the photo after one of her kids had gotten a hold of her camera and started texting pictures of random things in the house where they were living at the time. She had taken the camera and started going through to delete the pictures her kid had taken when she found this one and noticed something interesting about it. Brad says, I trust my friend that he believes his sister's story, but I can't speak to his sister's character myself. I don't know if she has the capability to fake something like this or not. I don't know anything at all about editing photos or whatever, but I know one of you guys mentioned that you had some experience with it. He says, take a look. Can you tell me if it seems legit or fake? And he says he doesn't know what to look for. All he has is this photo and the story to go along with it. And for him, that isn't enough to say for sure what's going on in the picture, but he does find it interesting. Then he says, anyway, let me know what you guys think. If it's clearly doctored, let me know so he can rub it in his buddy's face.
Yeah, looking at the photo, I would say I don't see anything that looks clearly doctored. It's not a completely high-res photo or anything like that, but no obvious signs. It's not like great or anything. It looks the image is two young girls playing a computer game, it looks like, sitting at a desk, and it's a photo of a living room and a little bit of maybe a kitchen or side of a dining room or something. And there's a little girl, sort of an apparition, standing on the floor. Kind of, you can't really tell if it's in front of the table or behind the table because it kind of goes a little lighter as it gets to the bottom. But it looks pretty clearly to be a little girl, like 4 or 5, in a dress. The photo, the first thing that strikes me, if I saw this photo, I would be like, oh well, it's a photo of nothing. Why would that picture have been taken? But but he explains it in there, so that's already ruled out. But my next question would be, so you know whose apartment this is? This isn't just like a hoax that's going around the internet and it's just some random photo. So like I would want confirmation that that's an apartment that someone actually knows that I can talk to firsthand.
Right. So part one of this photo investigation for Brad is to even identify, even though the story is that a young the daughter, I guess, picked up the camera and was just randomly snapping the pictures, and she was going through to delete them. It sort of looks like a Raggedy Ann doll, like a translucent Raggedy Ann doll. So it looks like the head's kind of cocked to one side. I wouldn't know if this would be some sort of doctoring unless there's a pretty slick Photoshop in there. You don't really see any edges. You know, you don't see any sharp edges on it.
Yeah, it's pretty good, I think.
Yeah, if someone doctored this as a joke, then they did a pretty decent job.
Yeah.
But if you doctored it as a joke, it doesn't look very... I would have probably put that apparition a little bit closer to the other two girls there, and maybe with like the apparition's hands coming out to like touch the girl or something.
Right. So it's from this emailer from Brad's friend who sent it to him, and Brad's friend, supposedly it's Brad's friend's sister's place. So I would ask Brad, have you been to that place? Is that what it looks like? And if not, ask your friend, if that's really his sister's place, because maybe his sister is messing with him. So I would track it back there first, and then after that, I would probably just shrug. I mean, is the place haunted otherwise? Like, are there other reports other than this photo of the place being scary in any way?
Right. How long had they lived in this place? Had they heard anything else? Did they smell certain sulfur smells in this house?
The girl's not holding a knife. It's not a bloody dress, so she seems peaceful. It doesn't seem like a dangerous ghost. If it is,
see, that's why I'm saying if this was to be photoshopped, why not throw a knife in there?
Right.
Why not
right. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe that's the brilliance of it.
Yeah. Maybe.
But this does remind me of the picture that we discussed last time on Ghosts Part 1 with the Stanley Hotel picture with the ghost hunting group. And there were those two mysterious apparitions that were on the stairs coming up onto one level and then the other level going up. And you said we had a message from a very dear friend of ours. Maybe this is a good segue into it because he does a pretty decent job sort of technically breaking down how a camera can take a picture like this.
So it is our dear and very old friend, Jordan Bonaparte from the Nighttime podcast, who sent us his thoughts on ghosts. And it's about 7 minutes. Let's play that now.
Hello, Tim. Hi, Lance. Jordan from the Nighttime podcast here. You guys probably noticed I've been trying hard to reach you both by phone, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, but I've had no luck. I'm thinking I've either been blocked or maybe your critics are right and the two of you have gone Hollywood. I guess there's also a third possibility, one in which your time is spread thin between your two incredible podcasts and your hit TV series. I'm really hoping it's the third that's true. If so, congratulations on the well-deserved success. I'm proud to know you both, and I'm honored to, at least for one night, have shared the stage with both of you and Satan, like we did that night in Somerville. In the end, why you aren't responding to me is irrelevant. If you're hearing this message, that means you've received the USB thumb drive I've sent you via registered mail, and you found the lone audio file it contained. So now that I have your attention, let me get to my message. You're probably wondering why I've been blowing up your inbox the way I have. It's not because I want Maggie Freeling's autograph or a lock of Tim's Kennedy hair. It's because I want to share my thoughts on the recent Crawlspace episode in which you discuss the phenomenon of ghosts or spirits. Firstly, I'd like to commend you for taking on the topic and opening the door to a conversation that includes considerations of parapsychology and the unexplained. In listening to the episode, I felt you took a balanced look at the phenomenon, but there were a few things that bothered me. I want to start with the Stanley Hotel photo. The idea that we can capture a ghost's image on film is an archaic one, better suited to the days when photography was much less understood. To me, when looking at the photo, it's a clear case of a shot in which the shutter speed was such that the motion was captured. Thus, anything moving quicker than the shutter appears as a blur. And looking at the photo, to the right, a red jacket draped over a lady's arm is a blur, and a small child stepping from one stair to another also appears as a blur, not a paranormal or supernatural apparition. I don't think it's a ghost. I think it's just a coincidence that the shutter was released as she dropped her weight from one stair to the other. An easily recreatable event on your own, the stairs in your own home if you have a manual camera set to somewhere around 1/4 a second exposure. I won't even mention the fact that the photo was taken on a ghost tour. To me, their credibility is already gone. Think of it this way. If a guy wearing an X-Files shirt ran up to you saying, "I just saw a UFO," would you take it as seriously as if it was a plumber leaving a job site? I know I wouldn't. Now I'd like to address the broader message of your show. Although you didn't directly question the existence of ghosts, you did use words like belief and if. It's my opinion, there is no debate. The release of your episode covering the existence of ghosts was very timely for me, as I just finished a Halloween special of the Nighttime podcast in which I cover a local ghost story. I think that's maybe the reason I got so heated when I listened to your episode. I'm going to paraphrase some of my thoughts on it now, as I think it's relevant and I would like to share it with you. So now, regardless of the name you hang on the concept, a belief in ghosts or souls or spirits is widespread across nearly every civilization that's come and gone through our shared history. If you go back through humanity's written history and even further back into folklore, we've been considering what becomes of us after death and what connection our living world has with any other plane of existence. Although it is an ancient consideration, it's not an archaic idea that died in dark, forgotten ages. It's likely an overwhelming majority of those listening to your show right now self-identify with a present-day personal belief system that incorporates a form of spiritualism. It's also equally likely that those people listening right now live in a town that's passing a local ghost story down through the generations. So with that said, for most of us, ghosts, spirits, or hauntings, or whatever you want to call them, are a part of our daily lives. As far as what they are, where they are, and how they interact with our world, that's the part that's up for debate. What I believe is what people are experiencing is some type of an echo, some type of an energy that's been left behind by a prior occupant of, or by a traumatic event that occurred in the spaces we now occupy. One such example is the many reports of a three-masted schooner appearing completely engulfed in flames, sailing within a body of water near my home in Nova Scotia. These reports have spanned over 200 years and refer to an apparition so lifelike that witnesses have gone as far as to board rowboats in hopes of rescuing the crew fighting the flames on the ship's deck. However, the blazing phantom simply dissolves into mist, leaving behind no wreckage or debris when approached. Could all these reports be related to a simple coincidence of light and reflection? Or perhaps did these waters serve as the setting for a long-forgotten tragedy? And perhaps some process unknown to modern-day science has left trace amounts of its horror behind, cursed to repeat itself as the result of some unknown supernatural process. Now, something I'd like people to consider, if you doubt the existence of supernatural phenomena such as ghosts, remember that the electricity that powers our lives today had mystified even the most brilliant minds for the majority of human history. More recently, cosmologists largely agree on the existence of dark matter or dark energy, but they can't see it or prove it yet. Maybe during our lifetime, science will develop to the point in which other unseen forces can be observed. So in closing, have I seen a ghost? Maybe. Have I seen things I can't explain? Definitely. Do I think my soul, or whatever you want to call it, simply extinguishes into nothing when I die? I certainly don't think so. What's out there, where it is, how we see it, how we interact with it, I have no idea, but I've definitely been inside some homes and places and experienced things that just didn't feel right, as if there was some part of my body or brain or some type of sense that, I don't have fine-tuned that was able to perceive it. And that for me is enough to believe something's out there. And with that, I just want to thank you for listening to this message, and thank you both for the great work that you do on both Crawlspace and Missing Maura Murray. Have a happy Halloween, guys.
Thank you very much from
Jordan. That Jordan,
Yeah.
man, with his infinite observations, his articulate delivery, his wisdom. Can't thank him enough for that.
I could hear a lot of edits, though. I heard a lot of edits. I feel like he started and stopped a lot of times.
Yeah, he probably did. It probably was. I actually didn't think that we were going to bring that up, but now that we're talking about it, yeah, that probably took him like a month to put together.
I liked his shameless plug, though. That was my favorite part.
Oh, the shameless plug was great. Yeah, and Jordan, despite the fact that you do not want the lock of Kennedy hair, it's on its way. It's in the mail, U.S. postal mail. It'll probably get to Canada sometime around Christmas. I keep a little box of it.
Jordan's message was good. I liked what he said about parapsychology, and he also got into some kind of religious aspects and what happens to your soul after you die. And obviously we were in no way prepared to tackle that entire subject here tonight, but who knows where this conversation will lead eventually.
Well, that got me thinking. It got me thinking about energy, because he brought up energy in his message, and that was something that we discussed briefly in the first Ghost episode. So when you think about energy, the universe is made up of energy. It's basically the currency of the world. It's finite. Our life is defined by it. You eat because you need energy to live. A star burns its gas up in a nuclear fusion because that's the energy that's the energy fuel it needs. And the energy in turn makes other stuff, right? So all life is a constant transfer of energy. So if you base that, if you think about that argument or that standpoint, you could say that all human energy has to go somewhere. So where does it go? Perhaps all that human energy in the universe is connected on some level. And when you think about what Albert Einstein, there's a great quote from him that says, everything is energy, and that's all there is to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely gets into a little bit of a deeper topic, I think. But I like what Jordan said about ghosts not really being up for debate, and the story he told about the ship that is on fire, the ghost ship that people have taken rowboats out to, which is pretty drastic. He says they're kind of like an echo, a repeated emotional like imprint. And I think there's an answer in there somewhere. And I agree with you. It has a lot to do with energy, but I think it also has a lot to do with emotion. I think if someone dies in a very emotional way, I think that's why you probably see scary ghosts, because a lot of ghosts were probably murdered. I think a lot of people or apparitions that are ghosts were probably met with violent or very emotional ends.
Sudden ends.
Yeah.
Unexpected ends.
Yeah.
Maybe what you're talking about there is this energy that's caught on a loop, right?
Right.
They can't, yeah. It's like you're stuck in it.
Right, because it's not the person's consciousness, right?
No, because
I
don't
imagine that, right?
Right, because a person's consciousness is something that really is not finite. You can't measure that. Whereas you can measure electromagnetism in someone's brain. So that transfers somewhere. And to think about that ending so abruptly, it kind of reminds me of a car stalling out and you try to restart it. Like that energy is going somewhere. Of course, it has some sort of mechanism, the human being trying to start it, but the energy can't get from point A to point B.
Also, with Jordan's message about the Stanley Hotel, I want to mention about the photography. I think he's wrong. In this particular picture. I know what he's saying. And you can see there are people moving, and he did say someone's moving. There's a kid who's sitting there and he's kind of moving, and it does sort of seem like the exact same effect. It's not exactly the same effect, though. Am I wrong on this? I mean, first of all, yes, it was a ghost tour, and it's a great point that he has, and we made the point and kind of joked about it a little bit. And you know, this was a ghost tour that this photo was taken on. Is that a coincidence? Maybe, probably not. But none of these people look like they're expecting this kind of situation to happen. They're all just kind of waiting there. And this little girl in this nightgown is walking down the stairs. You can see through her at points. Now, again, on the back bench, there's a kid who's leaning, and you can tell he's moving, not incredibly fast, but you can't make him out. You know, so he does appear a lot like the apparitions. But I think there's a little bit something more to these. And also, you have to say that every single person in this photo is in on it, if that's what happened. So none of these people have talked after this photo came out. So Jordan's basically a conspiracy theorist, is what I'm hearing. See how I turned that on him?
Well, I, for one, would never call out a Canadian for being wrong on anything. So I just have to applaud your courage on that one. What you're saying is, well, what I gathered Jordan was saying was that the reason why these two apparitions appear the way they appeared was because when the camera took the picture, it was performing at a certain shutter speed, and those two people were moving at a speed that caught them like that, and no one else in that picture were moving at that speed.
No, he's right about that.
Right.
But and there is someone moving there's two things moving. This woman that he described with the red jacket draped over her arm, and there's this kid in the back who's sitting on a bench, and he's leaning up or leaning back. So they're moving at about the same speed that these people would have been walking in. So it is the same effect.
Yeah, but what if the little girl's like running up the stairs?
Oh, well, the little girl is definitely taking one slow step down the stairs. The woman is walking up the steps seemingly a little more brisk. I mean, I can't give you an exact mile per hour or anything like that, but they're both in motion. You know, most people in this photo are not in motion.
So in order to prevent any sort of inter-podcast disturbances, perhaps we should put a call out to some of these people in the photo, anybody who knows where this photo comes from, or the people that were in it, or who took it. Maybe we can get an explanation, because the intercontinental relations seem to be a little tense right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you are one of the people in this photo, please contact us at crawlspacepodcast@gmail.com, or if you know anything about this photo, or if you know this photo to be a hoax and your name is not Jordan Bonaparte, please email us at crawlspacepodcast@gmail.com.
Although I'll follow that up with, if you are the ghosts that are in this photo, please do not contact us, and we'll just let it be.
I would say contact us on Halloween.
Contact Jordan on Halloween.
Okay, here's another story, another email here from Amanda. It was an older house built in either the late 1800s or early 1900s, and my family experienced a lot of strange occurrences while we lived there. It was mostly just random things going into the kitchen, and some cabinets would be open that they had just been closed, or hearing weird sounds that sounded like footsteps, usually in the kitchen. There was a back bedroom that stayed much colder than the rest of the house, even in the summer. It was used as a storage room and just had a very strange and scary vibe to it. My brothers and I would dare each other to see who could stay in there by ourselves the longest. That's creepy in itself right there. Shows you how scary, frightening the room was. We also had 2 bathrooms, but only used one. And the one we didn't use had a super creepy vibe to it, just like the back bedroom. Eventually, my parents boarded these 2 rooms off. They said it was to save on utilities, but I don't know, ...
That is super interesting that the parents boarded off those 2 rooms. She continues with, one time our blender went off in the middle of the night. My parents said that it was probably caused by a wiring short, but it was never proven. And years later, when we moved out, they admitted that they just told us that so we wouldn't be scared. That was probably the most concrete, scary thing I remember happening there. I never saw an actual ghost or anything like that. My brothers claimed to see a figure of an old lady in their room, but as a kid, I thought they were just trying to scare me. To this day, they still say that they did see something, though. As for myself, I mostly just had that feeling of constantly being watched, which is creepy. We've all had that feeling. You wake up in the middle of the night and it just feels like something's there. If I was alone and it was very quiet, sometimes I would think I heard voices, but could never make out what they were saying. I also had horrible nightmares. And she goes on to say, when I was in 8th grade, we moved to a new house, and all of the weird stuff just stopped, including my nightmares. I've never had strange experiences like that in any other house, not even later on when I lived in an even older house that was supposedly haunted. I'm not 100% sure I believe in ghosts, but I feel like that house had some heavy energy at the very least. I do like the theory about places having energy. That makes a lot of sense to me, which I think is really cool. That's a really cool story. It fits in with this. I don't know. It's like it's unintentional that we start even talking about this energy, and most of these stories have some sort of energy-related substance to them.
Yeah, it seems like the world is ready to just accept that, like not ghosts or like, our dead, I don't know, dead people coming back to haunt us because it's fun or anything like that. I think what we're like, I was kind of surprised that we didn't get any emails or tweets being like, you guys should be ashamed of yourselves for coming to that conclusion that you actually kind of believe in ghosts. And no one said that at all. It was all people that were like, yeah. And Jordan even kind of called us out for like not going far enough on it. So, I mean, maybe everyone just believes this, and that's just deep down, like singularly, people just feel that, in their bones, I think.
That's a great way to put it. People just feel that because it's all connected somehow. I don't know how. It's funny how kids feel it more, and they're less influenced by anything that's been out there in the media. I mean, we have this story here about her and her siblings, and they just had a weird feeling being in this bathroom. Doesn't help the fact that the parents boarded up these rooms and then told them that it was for utility purposes. A kid seeing a boarded up room gives you a weird feeling, especially when you already had that weird feeling about that room.
Yeah.
I remember the house I grew up in had this little closet that was off to the side. You go upstairs and it was to the right, and it was like a little half door. And when you went inside, it was the ceiling came down because it was the roof. So you kind of had to duck down when you went inside, and it was our toy closet. And it was just my 2 sisters and myself. It was all of the toys, and it was my older sister's old toys in there. And that room terrified me. And occasionally we had to clean it out and organize it. And I just hated being in that room. And there was also down in our basement, for some reason or another, our parents had decided they wanted to expand the basement out to the shed. So the basement was obviously underground, and then the shed was the way the ground went up. Let me start this again. I'll describe it a little better.
I'm loving this. This is like a theory that my grandmother had about our old next door neighbors. She said that the woman was a seamstress, but so she had like people come over, like older couples come over to pick up their dresses and drop off their stuff. But my grandmother was convinced that there was a tunnel funneling drugs back and forth from the garage to the house because the husband did a lot of yard work and he was in the garage a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's a whole topic for another episode.
Yeah, a whole nother episode was that your grandmother?
Yeah.
For Grandma Pleary.
Yep.
So for whatever reason, at the end of the basement on the stone wall at the very top, my parents stopped working on this expansion of the basement that eventually goes out to the shed, and it was just this hole. It was this like probably 4 foot in diameter hole that went out to the shed. So if you ever went to our house and you couldn't get in, you could go to the shed, you'd move a board, and then you'd go into the hole and you'd be in the basement and you'd drop down. It was probably like 6 feet down, so you kind of hang and then you'd drop down and you'd go up through the basement stairs and you could open the door.
What?
And
What?
So that hole was over the kitchen. And
Was this like an Amityville situation and your dad was possessed when he did it? When he dug this hole?
Yeah, and we're like, Dad, why are you so cold? You're always so cold. It's the middle of July. You're cold and you're sweating. I don't understand, Dad. But my mother told me about this dream that she had because I was always freaked out about this hole in the basement. And the
I wonder why.
yeah, I wonder why. No, every 9 or 10-year-old child should be mentally prepared to deal with crawling through a pitch black hole in their basement. So the hole was right below the kitchen, and the part of the kitchen was where the stove was, and by the stove was our silverware drawer. And my mother told me this story about a dream she had where she went into the kitchen and she didn't know why, but she needed to open up this drawer, the silverware drawer. And she opened up the drawer and she looked in it and it snapped back and it slammed shut. And then she opened it up again and it snapped back and slammed shut. And she did it a third time and she couldn't open it. It was like a tug of war game with this drawer. So long, reading that about this room and just being a kid and having a bad feeling about a room is completely relatable. I had a bad feeling about this toy room. I had a bad feeling about, shockingly enough, a bad feeling about a 4 foot in diameter hole in my basement that led to a bleeding pig.
Potentially.
And,
wait, a bleeding pig? What?
Amityville, the pig in the window.
Yeah.
And I had a bad feeling about this drawer. There was a haunted drawer in my kitchen from when I was probably like 9 to about 22.
But that was just a dream.
Well, that was a dream, but it still resonated in my head. I guess in retrospect, maybe my parents weren't that good at raising me because they filled my head with the like, she probably shouldn't have told me the story because I never opened that drawer ever again in my life without thinking about it snapping back.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you're a good lad these days, so they must have done something right. But
Thanks.
I think it's something inherent. I don't think she would like that was a bad parental moment from your mom. I think she was teaching you about the world. She was teaching you about ghosts, and obviously getting something off of her chest that she was bothered by. But it's something that people understand, I think, just like we were talking about, kind of inherently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to make it seem like that obviously was kidding about being raised poorly, but yeah, exactly. There was something about that moment that, it seemed important enough to tell somebody else. And I guess it's kind of cool that she decided to tell me that I would be at least mentally capable enough to handle that without, totally freaking out.
Yeah. In need of great talent for your business, but short on time? You don't have to get lost in a huge stack of resumes to find your perfect hire. You just need the right tools, smarter tools.
You said that to me, and I'm under this stack of resumes, and I couldn't hear what you were saying. And all I'm thinking is, what if hiring could be easier, more streamlined, and less time-consuming? So even when you're busy, you could still be smart about the way you hire.
With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then, ZipRecruiter puts its smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting, so you receive the best possible matches.
No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. That's just 24 hours.
Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by growing businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results.
And right now, our listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ziprecruiter.com/crawlspace.
That's ziprecruiter.com/crawlspace. One more time to try it for free. Go to ziprecruiter.com/crawlspace.
ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
From Shelley. Hey guys, just listened to your Ghost Vault episode and I can't help but tell this story. Please use it. In the fall of 1999, my then boyfriend, Ben, who is now my husband, and I agreed to house sit for a couple that were going overseas for 2 weeks. They were sort of a friend, and we did not know anything about them other than he was a high-paid dentist and they had 2 Dalmatian dogs that would need caring for. We were excited by the opportunity because we lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment and they lived in a sprawling, gorgeous mansion on a lake.
Lake Minnetonka is a wealthy suburb of Minneapolis. Back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, Lake Minnetonka was mostly a touristy destination. People would go there on trains to vacation by the water. Lots of older houses, like the one we would be staying in. They were remodeled and added onto, but the old charm was still visible and felt throughout the home. This particular house was built in 1915.
The house was on a large lot with massive trees and a steep backyard hill that led to the lake and a dock. The dogs were fenced in at the front of the house and spent most of their time outdoors. Nothing seemed weird at first. We were just happy to be 20-somethings in a large house drinking coffee while overlooking the lake. The feeling of bliss soon wore off. On the second night of our stay, I was in the large kitchen cooking a late dinner. The oven still had lots of time left, so I pulled myself up to the center kitchen island and turned on the kitchen TV. This was during the whole Who Wants to Be a Millionaire craze. Regis hosted every night, and it was literally the most exciting thing to ever happen, and I agree, it was pretty exciting back then. Ben was in the adjacent room, and we were yelling back and forth what we thought the answers were. The dogs were outside, and there was no one else in the house.
She goes on with, I began to notice this weird sound. It took me a moment to even realize it was coming from the room I was in and not the TV. It was a soft, swishing sound. Swish, swish, swish. I looked to my right and left, but saw nothing and quickly brushed it off. It was autumn and most likely a breeze or leaves, I told myself. I went back to focusing on Regis.
But then I heard it again. Swish. Swish, swish. I spun my head around, and behind me, on the French door leading to the front yard, the cord that you could use to pull open the slated blinds was swinging back and forth. As if someone had the cord in their hand and let it go. It just sort of swung there, swishing against the closed blinds.
Now the hair stood up on my neck. A really odd, scary feeling washed over me that I cannot even explain. I sat there, still as can be, and watched the cord slowly come to a stop. I muted the TV, popped off the center island, and just stood there, watching, waiting. Something told me to stay.
Sure enough, I watched the cord lift into the air and fall loose, swinging back and forth. Swish, swish, swish. Now I'm terrified. There is no one there. The windows are closed. The breeze could have moved the cord to the blinds. Most girls would scream, "Get my boyfriend in here."
So now I'm standing there, pointing to the door, and he's staring at it, waiting for me to tell him what's going on. I tell him the cord to the blinds is moving by itself. No, he says, that's impossible, but it's happening. I know it, and I felt it. Just then, as if on cue, the cord lifts again in front of us, and I swear to God the blinds started going up. Click, click, click.
One by one, the blinds move up Up they go all by themselves. I grab Ben and push my way into the doorway behind us just as we hear the blinds let go and slam back shut. I turned off the oven, threw the chicken in the garbage, and refused to go back in there. We ate Doritos for dinner.
The next day, we returned to the house after eating out. It was dark in the home, and we were flipping on every light we could. We could hear this loud noise coming from upstairs where our guest room was. We creeped up the stairs. The sound was growing louder. A chill swept over us. It was the bathroom.
The bathroom sink faucet was on full blast, water pumping out fast and furiously. Ben turned the water off, shrugging it off. I was so scared at this point, I begged to go home. I did not want to be there anymore, let alone sleep there. But we stayed.
Nothing happened for a few more days. I was beginning to think I had imagined the whole thing. I drew a bubble bath in the large jacuzzi tub near the guest room. I was reading my book and soaking when suddenly the jets turned on by themselves. I punched at the button to make it stop, but nothing seemed to work. I got that weird feeling again, like someone was in the room or watching me.
I freaked out and stood up in the tub, grabbing a towel. The jets stopped. The roar of the jets stopping as quickly as they had begun. Silence all around me. Only the faraway sound of Ben playing the PlayStation downstairs. Just as I'm getting out of the tub, the sink faucet roars to life right in front of me, the water bursting out of the faucet like Niagara Falls. I literally screamed.
I ran out of the tub, out of the bathroom, and down the stairs, screaming at Ben frantically, dripping wet and terrified. I'm trying to explain what has just happened when I'm interrupted by a loud bang. The bathroom door has slammed shut above us. The water is still running out of the faucet when we decide to leave.
We bolt past the bathroom and into the guest room, throwing our stuff into the suitcase as fast as we can. Ben turns off the water, turns off all the lights, locks the creepy-ass house up, gets in the car, and we speed around the lake towards home. We had a week left at the house, but never slept there again. We only checked on the dogs and fed them. I was never so scared of a place in my entire life, and we never told the owners what happened.
And when they left a message a month later asking us to house sit again, ... we never called back.
Oh, great ending. I love the punchline.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Shelley? I don't know if I 100% believe every detail in here, but I got to say, when we first read this, I just wanted to read it. It's so well crafted.
Yeah, it's good.
It's very good.
It's good. It's creepy. And I believe most of it. I will say that she said that they were drinking coffee and watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Sorry, that one doesn't ring true. You were drinking wine and watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Come on, let's be honest. So I think she didn't want to cloud the email with us saying, well, she was just drunk, and then she was in the hot tub the second time, probably some drinks going on that weekend. I get it. It doesn't mean that didn't happen, though. Let me just add. I think you were in a haunted house. I'll be honest. I think you were in a place that didn't want you there. That's what I think.
I think that the owners of the house rigged this house up to do shit like this. And they probably have cameras, and they probably got themselves a good laugh out of watching you guys freak out and flee the place. And then they probably went back and fed their dogs.
Yeah, that's probably exactly what happened. But yeah. just pranksters, just a dentist getting his rocks off.
But I got to say, I don't know. Again, I don't know. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if it's partially true, but Shelley, excellent job writing this.
Good job. Thank you, Shelley. And thank you, everyone who submitted stories. We really appreciate it. Parapsychology, Lance. The word reminds me of Peter Venkman in the first scene of Ghostbusters. Electric shocking the man, even though he's getting right answers just because he likes the woman. Not that it's fake or anything. I mean, it was kind of portrayed that way in that scene, at least, or kind of a joke in that scene. But that is something I think we should dig into, kind of go a little further on this conversation down the line. What do you think?
I totally agree. It's such a fascinating concept to get into the human element, to get into the human brain, to really explore this concept of parapsychology and the concept of energy and how it relates to what we see and how we interpret things.
Yeah.
We bring up a lot the sleep paralysis, this worldwide phenomenon.
That would be a great one to get into. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that has a lot to do with this common energy or this common parapsychology connection.
Okay, so last topic here that I have tonight is just a little story I wanted to tell you, Lance, about my sister. We entered this idea a few weeks ago talking about ghosts, coming up with some personal stories, maybe that's interesting on some level, just kind of knowing the person and being like, well, this person wouldn't make that up. So I know my sister, and she doesn't really make this stuff up. And I've known this story for like 20 years or more, possibly. I'm trying to think. I was probably in my early teens, maybe 12 or something like that, when this story happened. Maybe like 13 or 14. But we were living in Medford, and there was this little pathway that we often took to go. It led to other parts of the city, and you'd go there. You'd go down the pathway, and my sister was taking it one night to go visit her friends. And I just remember her leaving. I was there in my house that night, and I remember her leaving, going to see Jill. And then she just came running back like a minute later, like pounding on the door, running back frantically, looking like she just saw a ghost. And so that's literally what she said. She says she thinks she saw a ghost. She said it looked like a woman who was kind of dressed in all white, and had her arm out, and she kind of thought when she first saw her that she was like holding like a dog leash or something like that. That's kind of what her first thought was on it. But as she got closer, she realized, this wasn't a physical person, and so she kind of got freaked out and ran back to the house. And so I remember that story. She had told it to me. She told us, obviously, right when that happened. I remembered it since then. I asked her again this week because of this episode. I asked her about it and what she remembered of it and what she thinks of it now and things like that. So she says now she thinks that, she still stands by that definitely happened. That was, I believe that was some kind of paranormal entity. But she says she thinks that was an angel now. And she says it was all white and it had its kind of arm out. I don't know. And she was like, also subplot. She was like, maybe her arm out. She was like pointing back, like, don't go that, and so it turns out that night in real life, my sister ended up going back out. And she met up with Jill, and she got into a fist fight with Jill that night. So, and my sister, she was kind of a wild one, but not into fist fights all the time. Like, she's probably only gotten into a few. So this was kind of a big event for her.
She's probably only gotten into a few.
Hey, Medford, yeah, it's
that's true.
Tough times.
I did not take into account that most people are just born with they've born with that right. Like this is what happens.
You grow up in Medford. A lot of times you don't have a choice. At least back then.
You're lucky if you have just a few.
Yeah, so I guess she got into a fist fight with one of her best friends that night. And she remains friends with them today, but I think they went through some hard times for a while because of that night. So she kind of looks back on it in a different way now. Not that person was trying to scare her, or that apparition was trying to scare her, but that was maybe potentially someone trying to warn her. And she also said that she went to, she loves psychics. She's been to Laurie Bruno, our buddy Laurie Bruno, very many times. And Laurie Bruno, she believes, told her that was an angel. And now I will say, my sister, I'm not 100% sure it was Laurie Bruno who said that. She was like, it was either Laurie Bruno or Sylvia Brown, who Sylvia Brown is a famous psychic, I believe, who passed away recently. Obviously, any psychic is extremely controversial. So some people are going to say this person's a fraud, a phony, a fake. Other people are going to say they believe that person. So anyway, my sister believed Sylvia Brown. She was into it, but it does kind of bring up like a religious question, kind of like how we started the conversation. It almost brings my sister's religion into it, into the conversation now. Maybe her religion affected the story, you know?
Is your sister heavily religious?
She was raised Catholic just like me, but not particularly. I think she definitely believes in things like angels and things like that, like what Sylvia Browne wrote about, that kind of thing.
I don't think so much of, if there's going to be any criticism about the psychics, I think people might be grasping at the wrong part of the story. I think the right part of the story is the incident itself. You said she was out of the house for
Like
a minute?
Yeah, less probably.
Less than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same house that I knew you at, right?
Actually, no, it was a place we lived before that. This is Sunset Ave. Yeah, very small street, a dead end road.
Where the house was it as thick with neighbors like your other neighbor,
Yeah, about
next door neighbors were right there.
Yeah,
It was
it's
heavily settled.
It's pretty residential. It's right next to Tufts University. So this pathway that I was describing is sort of filled with vegetation and next to a house, but also next to a gymnasium, Cousins Gymnasium at Tufts University. So that's kind of what you're looking at on one side. It's like a fence and like a yard with all sorts of crap, but it's all Tufts property. So it's actually kind of an isolated little pathway, I suppose, when you're in the pathway, but not, you know, and not a particularly isolated street, although it was a dead end or is a dead end.
Well, I can certainly see why your sister would run back. Your sister, from my experience and your description of your experience, and even the description tonight that she ended up getting into a fist fight with one of her friends, I would imagine it would take something quite remarkable to startle your sister to make her turn around and run back instead of approaching the woman and saying, "Why are you being so fucking creepy?" Right?
That sounds about right.
I feel like knowing your sister, that's her that would be her first reaction.
Why are you being creepy?
Why are you being creepy?
Get out of here.
Get out of here, kid.
Yeah. Go home. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. You're pretty right there. Yeah, she would rather throw a punch than cry a tear, my sister. So yeah, she's not one to get afraid of nothing, especially.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying I think we should focus on the incident itself. If it wasn't a ghost, if it wasn't an angel, if it was somebody there, that person was effectively creepy enough to send your sister running back. That alone is pretty creepy. The other alternatives are also very creepy. So whatever happened did at least burn itself into your sister's head enough so that she can still probably tell you the story without much of it changing.
Right. Yeah, and she did this week tell me the story without it changing or having changed. So yeah, pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. But I will say that I definitely don't think it was a real person out there at all. So I definitely believe her there, at least, that she saw something. Maybe it was an angel warning her. I don't know. But speaking of Lori Bruno, Lance, and we got to wrap up here, but just wanted to bring up Lori Bruno because it's a whole nother topic, right? But it's kind of related to this. Psychics. So Lori Bruno has said some stuff to me in my life that you wouldn't believe if I told you right now. I'm just going to tell you one thing. I'm going to leave you with one thing that a world famous psychic told me about 10 years ago. She told me that I was going to be doing a radio show. She was like, radio show? She was like, with Lance, your friend Lance. Like a spooky radio show, and you're going to scare the hell out of people. She told me that about 10 years ago. That's directly from her. That's from a notebook that I have from about 10 years ago.
And for the record, I had not met her at that time, right?
I think you maybe met her like that day.
I think it was that day.
Yeah.
I think I was in the room, but I went after you did.
Yeah, I can't remember the order exactly, but it wasn't like she knew you, or it wasn't like
No.
She didn't even describe like radio. She was like, radio show, and kind of like gave like I'm not really sure what I'm describing here, but I mean, it seems pretty obvious she was describing Crawlspace and Missing Maura Murray then. But, we obviously didn't know. Podcasts literally didn't exist back then, or if they did, they were in the infant stage and probably didn't even have a coined a name yet. The word podcast didn't even exist at that point.
Even at that time, I mean, it wasn't in any like realm of possibility for either of us to embark on a radio career.
No, would have been way out of left field. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to leave you with that and leave the audience with that, being like,
that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. I don't know how the hell she did that, but I swear to God, she did that. And like you said,
maybe
we weren't thinking of doing any radio.
No, maybe she looked at me and she was like, that guy there's got a face for radio.
That was probably it. It was probably just all based on that.
Yeah. I have to tell you, Lori Bruno has done some amazing things. She said some amazing things, and to people who have no idea what's going on in any aspect, just a quick follow-up on Lori Bruno. My girlfriend and one of her really good friends, actually the best friend that she has, they have similar names.
Also named Kat, right?
There's Catherine and Kat.
Oh, okay.
So very similar names. And Catherine has just recently discovered her sort of spiritual side, but I don't want to say spiritual like she's exploring Christianity or anything like that. It's more of like a sense that she's exploring. And she's credited my girlfriend with opening her up to that, because they have these cosmic conversations sometimes, and it all relates to this energy thing. So they wanted to go to a psychic, and I didn't even recommend Lori Bruno. She just knew that we were associated with Lori Bruno from our work with the podcast and the documentary. So they booked the appointment with Lori on their own, and they went to see her. And it was interesting. They both came back and they said she nailed it on so many things, but it was like she was confusing. They have very similar energy, and it was almost like she was confusing their energy. When Catherine sat down, she said to Catherine, who's the person in your life who is working in film or something like that? And she said, I think it's Lance. That's the only person I know who's doing anything in that industry. And she said, tell him it's going to work out. Tell him it's going to work out. It was an interesting dynamic of things she said to my girlfriend and things she said to my girlfriend's friend were all related to each other. Sometimes it was she nailed specific things like my girlfriend's grandmother, for example, and my girlfriend's friend's boyfriend, and his name is similar to my name.
Tance.
It's Tance, yeah. No, his name is similar to my name, and she was almost confusing him and I too. But what she was saying was accurate and pertained to one of us. But I feel like she just had this like collective energy she was trying to read.
Okay,
and
Okay, so there's some kind of collective pool that she dips into, and sometimes it gets a little confused. It gets a little confusing for her, I'm sure. And like as we talked about, like she didn't have the word podcast because it didn't exist. She had no basis for it. So she was like, radio, TV show? I don't know, something like that. That was what she said.
Yeah.
So,
and she did the same thing with my girlfriend when she was trying to. One of my girlfriend's jobs deals with. She works in the science industry. She works in. She deals with DNA on occasion, and Lori was speaking to her about she could see something like a coil, like a spiral, and like DNA, and like cutting, like scissors, and she's making the motion like scissors. And recently, this new development, CRISPR, came out, which was literally splicing DNA. It's the copy. It's taking a piece from here and putting it in, and you cut and you put it in, and it's revolutionary. And Lori is describing this, and my girlfriend says, "Oh, you mean CRISPR?" And Lori says, in the only way Lori could say it, she says, "I don't know what it's called."
Yeah.
Because it's just so obvious to her. Like, I'm just telling you what I see.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, well, one of the things we talked about is doing another Crawlspace live and talking to Lori Bruno. I think it would be really incredibly fascinating to talk to her about obviously her life and career, because she has actually even helped with law enforcement at times. And I know, again, some people will be skeptical of that, but we'll ask her the questions that a skeptic would want to ask her, I think. But I think it would be fascinating to talk to her about that, and also energy. Like, what does she think this is?
I couldn't. Once again, we've spent some time just kind of riffing on various topics, starting with ghosts, and we end in a place that I didn't expect we would end, which is Lori Bruno and this underlying, no pun intended, current of energy that we were talking about. Perhaps Lori Bruno is the person to talk to about this.
Of course she is. We got to do
Absolutely.
this.
Yep.
Let's set this live show up for somewhere in Salem, potentially. Let's look into this.
I think somewhere in Salem is probably about as appropriate as you can get, with the history that Salem has in that surrounding area, and Lori herself. We'll figure out where we're going to do it. We'll make the announcement, and we'll put it out there, and hopefully people can come. And again, if you're a skeptic, if you're a believer, I think it's going to be interesting on all levels.
All of it's perfect. We don't care. Just keep your patience during and don't distract. And we don't know. We may have Lori Bruno at work, doing her work in front of people. That would be pretty amazing. So yeah, we'll try to get this in motion. But anyway, otherwise, let's wrap up here. Thank you for listening to the ghost episode part 2. I know we kind of bounced around a little bit, but we stayed on the topic of energy at least, and weirdness and creepiness and things that we can't explain. I mean, that's why we're talking about Lori Bruno. Maybe she can help explain it.
And they've been trying to explain this for years, and my last thing, I just want to end with this quote from a hero of mine. I'm not even going to say who it is. "Merciless is the law of nature, and rapidly and irresistibly we are drawn to our doom."
That's Jordan Bonaparte.